Welcome to College Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Populists seek dividends from a climate change backlash. A fantastic fella, tributes for longtime GP and rural health advocate after swimming death off Bruny Island. Cockroaches and mountains of trash plague Acapulco after hurricane. Oxbridge admissions from state schools double in 5 years. Alyssa Piley's 22 points leads number 10 Utah over Merrimack 98-34. Populists seek dividends from a climate change backlash. Financial Times. The rise of populist and hard-right political movements in Europe poses a challenge to the continent's climate change ambitions, according to Tony Barber in the Financial Times. Barber highlights the role of climate controversies in the recent Dutch parliamentary elections, which saw far-right leader Geert Wilders' party gain victory. Farmers' protests against government plans to cut nitrogen-based emissions helped undermine the ruling coalition and led to the snap election. The European Union's Green Deal is also facing pressure from national politics, with France's Emmanuel Macron calling for a pause on new green regulations at the EU level. Barber concludes that politicians face a challenge in persuading voters that the green transition is in their own interests. Meanwhile, a useful way to understand where political parties stand on climate change is to examine their voting records in the European Parliament, Barber adds. Green and left-leaning parties have the strongest records of support for EU climate policies, but resistance is also found in mainstream center-right parties and nationalist, Eurosceptic right-wing parties. Barber concludes that hard-right parties are not consistently climate skeptic and notes that the far-right Freedom Party in Austria and Rassemblement National in France have both shown some support for climate change policies. However, Alternative for Germany, AfD, has a harder stance on rejecting climate change policies, according to Christoph Richter of the Institute for Democracy and Civil Society. Richter suggests that the AfD's opposition to climate change policies is driving up support for the party, with a recent rise in support linked to the government's plans to replace gas-fired boilers with heat pumps. Barber concludes that tackling climate change requires cross-border cooperation, while populist and far-right parties are driven by national sovereignty and identity concerns. A fantastic fella, tributes for longtime GP and rural health advocate after swimming death off Bruny Island. ABC. Professor Dennis Passion, a rural general practitioner and advocate for rural healthcare in Australia, has died in a swimming accident off Bruny Island in Tasmania. Professor Passion was known for his decades of service to rural generalist healthcare, particularly in Queensland and Tasmania, as well as his research into rural health and his leadership of advocacy bodies. His body was found in the water about an hour after he was last seen swimming out to a boat off Kingfisher Beach. Professor Passion retired last year and was named the 2022 Tasmanian Rural Doctor of the Year. Cockroaches and mountains of trash plague Acapulco after hurricane. New York Times. Residents of Acapulco in Mexico are facing a public health crisis following Hurricane Otis. Many locals, public health officials and emergency responders believe that uncollected garbage is linked to stomach infections, diarrhea, skin rashes and other ailments. Local business groups have called on federal and state officials to declare a sanitary emergency due to the accumulation of garbage, construction material, lack of potable water and the presence of insects and harmful fauna, including human remains. Mexico's president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has promised a quick recovery, but the mayor of Acapulco, Abelina López Rodriguez, believes that recovery will take far longer. The city estimates that 666,000 tons of garbage are piled across Acapulco, a huge increase on the 700 to 800 tons of waste that are normally picked up every day. The health brigades made up of federal workers have cleaned and disinfected just over a third of the city's 507 neighborhoods. Piles of garbage left outside can attract mosquitoes and rats, which then spread infectious diseases. Oxbridge admissions from state schools double in 5 years. Telegraph. The proportion of state school pupils in England gaining entry to Oxbridge has almost doubled in 5 years, according to an analysis of Department for Education figures by The Telegraph. The share of sixth form students from local authority-run schools going to Oxford or Cambridge rose from 0.8% to 1.5% between 2015 and 2020. The figures also revealed that Oxbridge admissions from state schools in the poorest areas doubled over the same period to reach 0.8%. State school admissions to the two universities now account for 1.5% of the total, up from 1%. Alyssa Piley's 22 points leads number 10 Utah over Merrimack 98-34. Associated Press. Alyssa Piley scored 22 points to lead number 10 Utah to a 98-34 victory over Merrimack on Friday night. The Utes had a dominant performance, outscoring Merrimack 30-12 in the paint and finishing with a 50-28 advantage in rebounds. Cadence Johnson led Merrimack with 8 points, but the team struggled to keep up with Utah on both ends of the court. Utah's strong defense prevented Merrimack from getting easy looks at the basket, and the Utes did not allow any offensive rebounds, points in the paint, second chance points, or fast break points in the first half. Ball scores a career-high 25 points in Santa Clara's 88-82 win over Oregon. Associated Press. Santa Clara's Adama Ball scored a career-high 25 points, including 14 in less than 5 minutes in the second half, to lead the Broncos to an 88-82 victory over Oregon in the Emerald Coast Classic. Santa Clara is now 2-0 against the Pac-12 after defeating Stanford earlier this month. The win sends Santa Clara to the championship game against Ohio State. Ball finished 10 for 14 shooting, while Christoph Tilley scored 18 points and Carlos Marshall Jr. and Tyree Bryan each scored 12. Keyshawn Barthélemy scored 17 points for Oregon, while Kwame Evans Jr. scored 16. Tackling climate change and alleviating hunger, states recycle and donate food headed to landfills. Yahoo! When Sean Rafferty got his start in the grocery business, anything that wasn't sold got tossed out. But on a recent day, Rafferty, the store manager for ShopRite of Elmsford Greenbank in New York, was preparing boxes of bread, donuts, fresh produce and dairy products to be picked up by a food bank. It's part of a statewide program requiring larger businesses to donate edible food and, if they can, recycle remaining food scraps. Globally, about a third of food is wasted. In the United States, it's even higher, at 40%, according to the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic. The U.S. spends about $218 billion each year growing and producing food that is wasted. About 63 tons, 57 metric tons, goes to waste, including 52.4 tons, 47.5 metric tons, that ends up in landfills and 10 tons, 9 metric tons, never harvested from farms. California and Vermont have launched programs converting residents' food waste into compost or energy, while Connecticut requires businesses, including larger food wholesalers and supermarkets, to recycle food waste. Farmers in Maryland can get a tax credit of up to $5,000 per farm for food they donate. Several states have joined New York in setting up systems allowing food to be donated. Rhode Island requires food vendors servicing education institutions to donate any unused food to food banks, while Massachusetts limits the amount of food that businesses can send to landfills, which Broadlibe said has increased food donations in the state by 22% over 2 years. Weekend time schedule. Associated Press. The following are the sports events happening on Saturday, November 25th and Sunday, November 26th, including the NBA, NHL, college football, women's college basketball, MLS playoffs, golf, tennis, and auto racing. Need a gift for the person who has it all? Masterclass Black Friday deal gives 2 memberships for the price of 1. Yahoo! Online learning platform Masterclass is offering a Black Friday deal where customers can purchase 2 annual memberships for the price of 1. Masterclass offers a range of courses taught by experts in various fields. The deal allows customers to gift a membership to someone else and keep one for themselves for $10 a month. The courses cover topics such as cooking, filmmaking, magic, and writing, among others. Advent calendars, from the spiritual to the fanciful. Yahoo! The Advent calendar is a tradition among Christians to count down the days until Christmas, but the religious meaning behind it is slowly being overshadowed by a more commercialized version of the calendar, which is used to give toys and treats to children up until Christmas Day. The calendar has since been used as a marketing tool, with cosmetic companies and jewelers using it to showcase their products. Donald Trump will look to upstage Clemson grad Nikki Haley at her alma mater's football rivalry game. Associated Press. Donald Trump is using a college football rivalry weekend to bask among his supporters in a state and region that are key to his presidential fortunes, while potentially upstaging his Republican opponent Nikki Haley on her home turf. Shannon scores 19 to lead Illinois past Western Illinois, 84-52. Associated Press. Illinois defeated Western Michigan 84-52 in their final home game of the season. Terrence Shannon, Jr. led the team with 19 points, while Dane Danger scored 16 points and grabbed 8 rebounds. Western Illinois was led by James Dent Jr., who scored 20 points. Illinois has won 5 of their first 6 games this season. They will have a week off before their Big Ten Conference opener against Rutgers on December 2. Western Illinois will play against Wisconsin on Monday. Number 4 Stanford women top number 13 Florida State 100-88 to win Ball Dogs Classic. Associated Press. Number 4 Stanford defeated number 13 Florida State 100-88 in the championship game of the Ball Dogs Classic. Kiki Iriafen led Stanford with 30 points and 17 rebounds, earning her the tournament MVP title. Stanford overcame an early deficit and outscored Florida State 72-54 over the final 3 quarters. Cameron Brink added 19 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 blocked shots for Stanford. Tania Latson led Florida State with 23 points. The win improved Stanford's record to 6-0 for the season. Can U.S. focus on Asia-Pacific while distracted by Ukraine, Middle East conflicts? South China Morning Post. The United States' strategic focus on the Asia-Pacific region is once again being diverted by conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East, raising questions about its alliances and influence in a region overshadowed by China's ambitions. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has insisted that the U.S. will maintain its focus on the Asia-Pacific, but history shows that such promises often go unfulfilled as the U.S. gets distracted by events in other parts of the world. The U.S. has previously attempted to pivot to Asia, but has been drawn into conflicts in the Middle East and the fight against global terrorist groups. The U.S. focus on the Asia-Pacific is crucial for countering China's growing influence, but ongoing conflict and the upcoming U.S. presidential election may divert attention away from the region. However, the U.S. can rely on its network of allies in the region, which the Biden administration has called one of its greatest strategic assets. These alliances and partnerships will be key to maintaining stability and countering China's activities in the region. Japan, Australia, and other U.S.-aligned partners will likely play a greater role in the region if the U.S. is distracted, but they cannot fully substitute for the U.S. presence and capabilities. The U.S. diminished focus on the Asia-Pacific will have a significant impact, as no other country is in a position to fill the gap left by the U.S. While Japan and India may increase their efforts in the region, they are limited in their capabilities and can only supplement the U.S. role. The U.S. lack of economic engagement with the region is also a challenge, as it stands in stark contrast to China's investments and the Belt and Road Initiative. The collapse of the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the limited progress of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework have hindered the U.S. economic commitment to the region. China's economic influence in the region will continue to grow, while the U.S. remains economically weak. Ruth Burroughs, writer on the life of prayer who was also Carmelite nun and prioress of Cadenham, obituary. Telegraph. Ruth Burroughs, also known as Sister Rachel Gregory, was a Carmelite nun and an influential writer on the subject of prayer. In her books, Burroughs emphasized that prayer is something that is possible for anyone and that God is the one who acts in and through individuals during prayer. She wrote from personal experience, having struggled with depression throughout her life. She described her life as being marked by a tortured sensitivity and preponderating fear from a young age. However, she found solace and meaning in prayer and ultimately became a contemplative Carmelite nun. Burroughs believed that prayer was not about achieving certain feelings or experiences, but rather about opening one's heart to receive the gift of God's love. She published several books on prayer, drawing on the teachings of saints such as Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross. Burroughs was known for her practical and down-to-earth approach, and she emphasized the importance of following Jesus in everyday life. She passed away on November 10, 2023, at the age of 100. That's all for today's news bulletin from the Six Dimensions. I'm Dr. Six, your resident observer, here to bring you the latest updates from around the world. In Europe, the rise of populist and hard-right political movements is posing a challenge to the continent's climate change ambitions. Climate controversies have played a role in recent elections, with farmers' protests and calls for a pause on new green regulations. It seems that politicians are facing the obstacle of persuading voters that the green transition is in their own interests. On the bright side, some hard-right parties have shown support for climate change policies, although there are still challenges posed by national sovereignty concerns. In Australia, the country has lost a prominent figure in rural healthcare. Professor Dennis Passion, a longtime advocate for rural healthcare, tragically passed away in a swimming accident. His dedication and contribution to rural generalist healthcare will be greatly missed. Acapulco in Mexico is facing a public health crisis in the aftermath of Hurricane Otis. Uncollected garbage is believed to be linked to various health issues, including stomach infections and skin rashes. The city is struggling to clean up the huge amount of waste, estimated at 666,000 tons, which is causing further health concerns. In education news, the proportion of state school pupils in England gaining entry to Oxbridge has almost doubled in 5 years. This is a positive trend, showing increased access to prestigious universities for students from state schools, including those from the poorest areas. On the sports front, we have seen some exciting victories in women's college basketball. Number 10 Utah and Santa Clara both emerged victorious, showcasing their talent and skill on the court. In other news, efforts to tackle climate change and hunger are being made through recycling and donating food that would otherwise go to waste. Several states in the U.S. have implemented programs to ensure that edible food is donated and food waste is recycled. These initiatives are crucial in reducing food waste and addressing hunger. Finally, as we approach the holiday season, Advent calendars have become a popular tradition. However, the religious meaning behind them is being overshadowed by a more commercialized version. While the calendars are still used to count down to Christmas, they are increasingly being used as marketing tools by various companies. That's all for today's news. I hope you found it informative and entertaining. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the challenges posed by populist movements to climate change initiatives in Europe? And what are your views on the increasing access to prestigious universities for students from state schools in England? Please share your thoughts and questions in the comments section below. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.